What's up, everyone? I'm here with Bo Bauer, a former Notre Dame linebacker and team captain who played for the Fighting Irish from 2018 to 2022. He recorded 121 tackles, 11 of which were for a loss, 2.5 sacks, 6 pass deflections in your career at Notre Dame. In your final season, which was unfortunately cut short due to a knee injury, you also became a National Football Foundation Hampshire Honor Society member and received the 2022 Notre Dame Father Lang Iron Cross Award. Next, you pursued a career in the NFL, which included stints with the Washington Commanders and Seattle Seahawks before retiring from football in September of 2024. Today, you serve as an implementation associate at Shields at Home and a strategic advisor with Project Land, which stands for Life After Notre Dame. Bo, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
So I want to start. I know you grew up in Pennsylvania. I know there's a lot of Notre Dame connections there, but I'm curious, what was your first kind of recollection or memory of Notre Dame? Is that a team you were a fan of, or how did you kind of get first hearing about that?
Yeah, when I was growing up in Pennsylvania, the Penn State crowd was pretty strong in Erie. And in my household, my family didn't go there, but had a lot of friends who did. And so I was just kind of on a visit at a different school actually during the time when Notre Dame was making their Sweet 16 run. I think it was like 2014 or 2015. And I just saw him on TV and it just kind of clicked. My head coach then within the next couple of days kind of mentioned taking a look at Notre Dame and I took a visit and pretty quickly knew that was the place for me.
What stood out to you about from that visit that made you feel like that's where you wanted to go?
I like it was a different place, right? It's what they say. It's hard to describe the magic there. I mean, definitely going there and now stepping out into a different world, truthfully. It really was that special with the type of people that are there. A lot of those people were mentors and they really matured me into the person I am today. And then a lot of lifelong friends. So it's just the people were different. And then you could tell that the university stood for something more than just pure education, right? It's building the whole human. And that's something I really kind of drink the Kool-Aid on.
Nice. And how early in your kind of recruitment process did you commit? I know you would have joined when Clark Lee was the linebackers coach and became defensive coordinator, but who was like on staff when you were going through recruitment?
Yeah, it gets a little jumbled with the years, but so the guy I committed to was Brian Van Gorder, and Mike Elston was the linebacker coach at the time. And then Brian Kelly went through the restructuring after the 4-8 year. I think that might have been 2016.
Hmm.
And I came in. Clark Lee was the linebacker coach in DC. I had Coach Nick Lazinski, who was our GA for most of the time there. And I love those guys. Still stay in contact with them to this day. They're both two of my closest mentors. So the kind of lived up to the hype of the type of people you'd be around.
What was it like to kind of go through that where you committed to a school where they had one defense coordinator, and by the time you got there, they had gone through two different ones and then obviously you had some stability once Clark Lee was there, but I guess, kind of seeing that train so much change before you even arrived on campus.
It was hard because I had all the same coaches for essentially the whole time in high school, no turnover. So going there and like going to a storied program in Notre Dame and then you're committing and then you're watching them that season go 4-8 was pretty tough to watch. And then clearing house and essentially not knowing anybody as you're coming back in and you had already committed to the old staff was a little bit awkward. But I mean that was just an important first step in being able to overcome adversity and being comfortable with uncomfortable type of things just because, there's so much to being a Notre Dame football player that like that was just the very first bit of what that experience was like.
And so you get on campus, um, and you kind of actually start playing right away. I think you played in all 13 games as a freshman, a lot on special teams. What was it like to kind of get on campus and hit the ground running like that?
It's super hard. I was a mid-year, and so there were 7 guys in my mid-year class. They're all fantastic guys, but man, it was really, really hard because you don't have that same, kind of ease into this is what football is. You have this curriculum, maybe they do today. Back then, they definitely tried, but it wasn't the same. Everything's snow covered. You can't find the buildings you need to go to. You're going right in the fire with Matt Balis in the off season. So you were just drinking out of biggest fire hose type of experience you've ever had. But I look back, and that was a pretty important time because being able to go through that first off season before going into the spring, I think made all the difference. People confused me with a quarterback when I was playing middle linebacker a lot in recruitment. And so once I got that type of hands-on Matt Balis strength training program, I was able to put the size on and then be able to contribute that first season.
Oh, I didn't realize you were that kind of seemingly undersized when you first got to campus.
Yeah, it used to drive me nuts. Probably was one of the things that drove me to work so hard. Always prided myself on being a maniac kind of in the gym and just saw Coach Bayless when he was down in Tampa a few weeks ago. So still stay in touch with him. And I mean, his type of training is unlike very few things you'll ever get to experience. So I'm fortunate to have been a part of that.
That's really interesting because I mean I didn't start covering the team until 2019, and I guess you were already much bigger then, so wouldn't have assumed you were the type of guy who maybe needed that Matt Bayless workout program to get to that point.
Yeah, I definitely did.
Um, awesome. And so your first year you're playing though, you make the college football playoffs as well. What was that run like to kind of be through it and kind of see some of the, I know there's the quarterback change after kind of struggling a little bit. Obviously the defense is playing well, but what was that like to kind of go through that whirlwind of a season and play a role right when you got there?
It was pretty magical. I mean, I got to back up some pretty cool guys. So Drew Tranquil obviously is having a great storied career in the NFL, really great guy. And then Tavon Coney was super talented while he was there. So being behind those two guys was, quite the experience. They had some great linebacker play. It was a great team because you won big some games, but there was a lot of those make or break type of games throughout that year where you had to win and you pulled it out against the opponent last second. And so I got to see how those people gritted it out in those final moments to win the game because that's really what I would go on to see what's the difference between a 12-0 team while I was playing and like a 9-3 team. Just being able to make those little wins in the game to get you there, right? It comes down to a game of inches, and that really became true. But yeah, the experience was amazing, right? Like I was pretty fortunate to go on a pretty good winning streak in high school, and so that extended right into college until we played Clemson. And so it's definitely a year I look back on fondly, though.
And kind of how did your career progress after that? I know 2019 wasn't, I think the team went 11-2. You kind of kept growing in your role a little bit. What was it like to kind of go from that freshman to um, trying to play a bigger role, figure out what you can do? Obviously, your body had just changed a bunch, so I'm sure you're kind of adapting to that too a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of been the story of my life. You don't ever really know going in. Like, I was never felt like I was going to be like the most athletic guy on the field or whatever that would be. But I always felt like I could find somewhere where I'd fit well and really figure out a way to produce. So I kind of started the year in the same spot that I finished my freshman year, which was pretty frustrating just playing a little bit on special teams, but I wanted a bigger role somewhere. And so Coach Nick Lazinski always said, be where your feet are. And so I still use that today. And so I just wanted to be the best at whatever I was given. And so whether that was being a backup or not, I didn't care. I was just going to be the best at what I was doing. So we ended up having somebody get a little bit of an injury that made me step up on special teams. Then I became the guy on special teams for the next couple of years. But then that trust on my special teams play would then build into being the third down linebacker and then a role player on defense and then a more significant player as the year went on. So really it was just about, succeeding where your feet are, doing well through what you've been given, and then you'd get more responsibility as you went on. And that was kind of the story of my career, which was just stacking days over and over through the good and the ugly until, more responsibility, more reps. And then that's really what it was for me.
And do you remember, I feel like watching you earlier on, you kind of became a fan favorite almost for your special team roles. You also had like the big hair. What was that like to kind of get that recognition for that role? And I know you made some big hits and stuff like that, but to kind of stand out early in that way amongst the fans.
Yeah, it was actually incredible. I'd never expected to be that well received just because, as a general fan, they don't pay attention as much to the teamers all the time, right? And you're playing a few plays on defense here or there. And so I never thought I was going to be that bigger guy. But the the Notre Dame fan base and the community really took me in, and I did feel that type of way. And I'm super grateful because, there's so much work that goes on behind the scenes, and a lot of it's never recognized, And so for that to be taken in by the Notre Dame fan base and be appreciative. And then like I think the other part of that is like it was a culture building piece because there's always those teams in college football that have great offense and defenses and then very poor special teams. And I think really the health of a football team, if you go out and you look at what their special team players look like and you have your best players playing special teams and you're winning punt, kickoff, you know the statistics on where the ball starts. So like stacking those little wins with having good players on both sides of the ball is what really I feel like made us a good team throughout my time there. Like if you go back and look at 2018, Drew Tranquil, Cole Kmet, Jeremiah Owusu, they're all playing on kickoff running down.
Yeah.
In 2020, it's the same thing. So we really just had a healthy team in that manner.
And I want to read a quote from you about you from Jack Kaiser quickly. He said, "He's a maniac, but an easygoing, upbeat maniac, a nice maniac. He's just a crazy dude, a crazy caveman." What do you think that kind of says about you? Because obviously those two things don't usually go together, nice and maniac, I guess. But how do you feel like you exemplified that?
I guess I would like to think Jack's talking about my work ethic the best I can take. Yeah, like I was saying, there's very few people, if you look at teams that are just purely like the most talented person. And I knew that wasn't going to be me. And so the things that I had to stack on is I always had to study more in the film room than everybody. It didn't always come natural. So I was in the film room on the whiteboard. I was honestly just afraid of failure. And I wanted to make sure that if I did fail, I could look back and say I did everything in my power that I could. I would know every offensive play that was coming, all my communications. I wanted to make sure I was aligned correctly, that I wasn't doing anything that was in my power that would make it harder on me to compete at the level. And then it ties back to the weight room and especially at the end of my career, I had a lot of good guys pull me along. Like some of them were Drew Tranquil, Lohi Gilman, type of those guys. And so if I wasn't going to be able to be the first rounder, I wanted to make sure I could pull as many guys along with me and make them better than I was. And so, I wouldn't even just say I was the maniac. The linebacker room turned into a bunch of maniacs. And I think that's why we all ended up pretty good. And like, if you look back, that whole room, while I was there for the most part, touched the NFL in some way, at least if it was small, which I think that's pretty special and unheard of.
Definitely. And you should also remember like Coach Lee and Coach Kelly talking a little bit about you mentioned like kind of be where your feet are, but kind of getting, you got a lot of recognition for making those big emotional plays and special teams and stuff earlier on, but eventually like to get a bigger role, needing to kind of control those emotions or hone them a little better. What was that process like, and how do you maybe take that type of skill set with you even today?
Yeah, I mean, Clark Lee is a very cerebral, philosophical thinker, and I've always actually valued that in him. Maybe not as much at the time when I was playing, but like now as an older man, like I definitely appreciate those type of things. And really, it went from a space of maniac, where like you're trying to amp yourself up to go hit somebody on kickoff, to like understanding that football is really a violent game of chess, and that's what it comes down to. And so my mindset really shifted from exclusively let's run through someone's face and win this play to I'm going to position myself and I'm going to cheat the board in a way that I already know I'm going to win before the play starts. And so once Clark Lee and Nick Lazinski helped me start seeing that, and I was able to make pre-snap adjustments, and I was able to start understanding the game from a situation standpoint and really able to wind down so that you could see the field clearly rather than being so chaotic that you couldn't see it all. That's really when, things started clicking for me, which can be hard, especially if you want to be the guy just being a maniac running around because football's short and it's fun to be that way. But those skills translate into the business world. Obviously, a lot of stuff we do with land is helping athletes transition to the business world. And so, like, I personally believe that the skills you learn in your sport apply directly to whatever you're doing in business. And I can tell you from transitioning from professional football directly into a healthcare services company is very different from, or is not very different from going from high school into Notre Dame football, right? So like those are both drinking out of the fire hose situation, have to figure a lot of things out, and it's pretty similar.
Makes sense. And in 2020, another run to the playoffs. I believe you played kind of the nickel linebacker role. How much did that kind of getting your emotions under control play into having that role on such a team that again had a lot of success?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty much everything. Like, because I'm getting the front set, I'm getting the stun set with the D line, I'm communicating with the secondary. Really, like how Coach Lee played that nickel position as the quarterback, the communicator. And so I had to make sure everybody was up on, one of the most important downs to make sure we could get off to the field. So that really became a role of execution, right? Like I didn't have 10 sacks in the season or whatever that was, but I made sure that all the guys were in the right spot so that they could get the sacks and pressure the quarterback and we could get off the field.
And then in 2021, I think you, at least statistically, had your best season. I think you had five passes defended, 47 tackles, kind of played all over the field, started a little bit. And that was also the first season with Marcus Freeman as defensive coordinator. How was that maybe a little different than how he utilized you compared to what maybe Clark Lee did? And how do you think maybe that, at least statistically, helped you do some different things?
Yeah, I'd say probably the biggest thing statistically was just the difference in philosophy for like base down linebackers. Coach Lee was primarily there'd be one person that played the majority of the game, where Coach Freeman was more of somebody that wanted to rotate people in. So I think I got more plays on base downs because you're not going to rack up tackles on third down. You know what I mean? Anything third and four, you likely pass is coming. So I think I got more exposure there. And I think really it probably comes down to that. It was also less chess in that way. Coach Freeman played a lot of base defense and rep that over and over again. So it was just fun, like fundamentally a different type of defense, which I wouldn't say was better or worse. I would just say that I probably got more exposure to base defense that year.
And what was your initial impression of Coach Freeman? Obviously, we see a lot of him now. He obviously is the head coach, but when he first got there as defensive coordinator, obviously different from the cerebral Clark Lee. What kind of stood out to you?
Think he's a great guy. Like genuinely, I think he's a great guy, and I appreciated everything he did for Notre Dame football and is continuing to do it. He really cared about the guys. You could tell it shifted from, I'd say, so much emphasis on the game plan to just trying to play freely, but not. It's a hard question, really, just
Okay.
because it's like it goes from playing this violent chess game to like kind of back to more of like we're going to do the same thing, but really, really well over and over again. And so it's just like two separate strategies that, like, obviously both of those individuals are having a lot of success today.
Yeah.
So they both work.
I'm kind of curious. I mean, did you see him as a potential future head coach? Like, how did he just stick out as even like away from what you did on the other practice field?
I don't know if I saw him as a head coach right away. I didn't ever think Kelly was going to leave. I don't know why I
Yeah.
thought that, but um, I thought though the part that nobody talks about that maybe people didn't see is I was impressed by how he flipped the switch because as soon as he was head coach, he had this whole narrative and you could tell that he had been preparing that position for his whole life. And when he came in, there wasn't like a beat drop where they were kind of waiting and he was feeling out the head position. He took the job full force. He had the golden standard. He had people working a certain way. He knew how to talk to a team. And so I'd say that aspect of his transition from a assistant coach to the head coach was pretty impressive.
And what was that like? I mean, you mentioned Coach Kelly leaving. I know there was like kind of rumors broke the night before, then there was a meeting the next morning. What was that like for, again, kind of before you got to Notre Dame, there was kind of that instability with coaching turnover. And then, but for the most part, it had been more stable. What was it like to then have that kind of ball drop on you?
Yeah, I mean it was surprising. But that is also the nature of college football at the same time.
Yeah.
So I think I remember one of my best friends who didn't play football called me. He's like, Kelly's leaving. I'm like, there's no way. And then you start checking, Twitter, Instagram, and like you're just seeing all these things. Um, yeah, I mean, he left, but like Notre Dame football goes on, like Notre Dame stands for more than just any one person can contribute. So I think that's shown today that like Coach Kelly did a great job while he was there. We've got close a few times. Coach Freeman's now led them just as or further, with the first New Year's Six bowl game wins in quite a while. So really, as somebody that's gone through that, I just want the guys behind me to have that success. I would love to see them win a national championship this year. Been
Yeah,
close enough for a long time.
definitely. And so then you have one more year, kind of got, I mean, definitely not lucky because of COVID, but you played every game your first few years, so you didn't get to redshirt. Did you kind of feel like fortuitous that you got that extra year and were able to come back for one more season?
Yeah, I was super grateful. I don't know if I was ready to go to the NFL at that point. So I think it was still the right decision. I'd live by that today to go back and get one more year. I also got to meet Al Golden, which is another great coach and poured a lot into me. Yeah, 2022 was a good year. Obviously, did not end the way that I wanted it to. Going into that, you started feeling almost invincible. Probably a part of that maniac piece was I never had to do rehab because I was never hurt because I would always do prehab constantly and just was obsessed with making sure again that I could do everything in my power not to get hurt because missing a game because I failed to do something was unacceptable. So um, that year, what are you going to do? It's the injury rate in football is 100%. I just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
And I guess before the season, you were also named a team captain. What was that like to get that honor? And do you remember how they told you?
Yeah, I mean, it was super emotional for me because I'd wanted it my whole time there. There's just so many good leaders on that team that it was hard to grab. But like the captains that came before me were all great, and they're well deserved it. But a part of me went back that fifth year because I did want it because I've been hunting it for so long, and it's just kind of like a recognition of like shaping yourself into a leader of like exceptional people. You know what I mean? So it really meant a ton to me. They came. It was one day after camp practice, and Coach Freeman started going, and he announced me last. So I remember sitting there all crazy, like waiting for him to tell me. And then all the defensive captains were gone, and I thought I'd missed it. And then they announced me as the special teams captain, and then I just it was kind of fitting. So I was happy for that.
Oh, that's awesome. And what was it like, I guess, especially looking back on it now, you mentioned, Coach Freeman, especially the last 2 years, has had a lot of success as head coach, but to kind of see him doing that job really for the first time that first year. And I know there were some, disappointing losses against Marshall and Stanford and stuff like that too, but to see how maybe he started growing from those lessons, I'm curious if you have any perspective on
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely learned from him. He's had a ton of
that.
success. I know he came in like crazy with practice. Like practices were more physical than games. And from rumors from friends that were there after me that he's kind of adjusted his approach, which that's kind of the calling card of a great coach is being adaptable to what the players really need. And so I think that he is adaptive and ongoing, especially in today's environment where there's NIL. Like football today is completely different while I was there. We had our first, later transfer in Brandon Joseph that Notre Dame had ever had. That was a big deal. And now there's people transferring and it's totally different. So having a coach that can not only lead people but be super adaptable is just what today's college football needs to have a successful program.
You mentioned at the top of you won the Iron Cross Award, which I think goes to the player who made the most improvement in the weight room. It sounds like a lot of that came maybe like right at the start of your career, but what did that receiving that honor mean to you?
It meant a lot, the people, you get hurt in your last year and you're kind of not down. You're trying to be there for your teammates, but it is a tough time, especially when you're on your way out. And so I'd been special teams player of the year for a number of years, and like that was always kind of my calling card. But then I just tried to be a good example to everybody, and do what I could, right? And it's always control what you can control. And so I was in the weight room in my wheelchair, trying to be in there with the scout team guys, making sure that they knew I was there with them. And maybe I can't do squats anymore, but I could do curls or try to do bench press or whatever that was. So I lifted a ton with the guys, was at practice a lot. And I think maybe they just recognized and appreciated that contribution, and that's really where that came from.
Do you feel like you still got stronger being able to do that?
Oh yeah, like you don't want to stop. As soon as you stop, it all fails. I mean, I'm still trying to keep it up today,
Yeah.
like I'll never probably be able to go back through that type of 5-year marathon of training that Coach Bayless put us through. So I've built what I have, and I'm just trying to keep as much as I can to stop it, for sure.
Nice. Um, and so because of the injury, I know your draft process and trying to go through that was a little obviously different. What was that like for you knowing, I guess I'm not sure when you were able to start running or moving very well again, but what was it like knowing that you're out of eligibility, this is something you want to pursue, but you're not physically where you want to be?
Yeah, I mean, there's a time in everybody's life, whether they're in business trying to be an entrepreneur or whatever that may be, where you just kind of have to take a risk. And like I knew it was a risk because I did everything in my power to make sure that I'd be back to 100%, which I think I got there. Got back to 100%, but it was a long road and it was not consistent or linear in any sort of way. We had some really bad days and some really good days. And so I just stuck to the process. I knew that I could outwork anybody. And so I just kept chugging day after day, even when that first year trying to get in the NFL didn't work. I just stuck it out until, really how that all shook out is there's Coach Larry Izzo, and he was fantastic to me. He really gave me the shot. The stars kind of aligned for me because it was Coach Dan Quinn and Coach Larry Izzo, who both were kind of advocating for me. DQ when he was at the Cowboys, and Larry when he was with the Seahawks, and then they both ended up on the same staff. And so I remember talking to my agent, and I'm like, if I don't end up with the Commanders, it's over. Like I'm hanging it up. There's no other team. Like that's it. Um, I just kept working. I went back to Notre Dame for the spring game. It had been my first break I'd taken in like 14 months, so, and just going straight. Went back to Notre Dame spring game, and then I'm leaving a land event, and I get a call, and it's the Commanders, and they're going to bring me out to vet camp. And so I had this 3-day camp. It was the first time I had played football in like 2+ years, and had to put it together, remember how to run defenses and be a linebacker, and it just ended up working out.
And I remember seeing you at Notre Dame's pro day, I think that the next year, and you were working even on some like long snapping and stuff like that too. What was it like to, I guess, go through that process a full year later?
Yeah, I mean, it was great. Well, not having to wait an entire year was great, but like the long snapping part was great because it's like uh, trying to diversify what you can do, right? You want to do as much as you can. So I'd put on film that I play a lot of special teams. I play a lot of defense, both nickel and base. And so I was trying to do anything I could. And so there was the Commanders long snapper, Tyler Ott, was great to me. He taught me a lot while I was there, but leading up to it, Coach Schmidt at Notre Dame spent a lot of time teaching me how to long snap and walk me through that, along with Mike Vince and Milk.
Oh yeah.
They my whole story was all these great people who poured into me, who gave me the opportunity. Coach Gio Murphy at House of Athlete down here in Tampa let me train there for 2 years, really helped me out. His staff poured into me. Coach Schmidt, Coach Mason, all these guys. There's so many people along my journey that made me even get the opportunity to have that experience. So super just grateful that I even got it.
And you mentioned Milk. He's now coaching with the team. Did you kind of see that that was a path he was interested in? Were you kind of his first player or pupil, so to speak?
I'll take it, and I'll tell him you said that. But yeah, I mean, the guy loved football, right? And it's a great fit. And so when I heard it was that's what he was doing, it clicked and made sense. And then yeah, he definitely taught me what I knew because there wasn't anybody else to teach me. And I'd be sending Mike and Coach Schmidt, I'd be sending them videos from down here in Florida when they're up wherever there, and they're like trying to critique me. So they definitely spend a lot of time helping me out.
And then you ended up retiring from football that September. I believe you suffered another lower body injury. What was it like to, I guess, kind of go through that where you had worked so hard, got there, then kind of had another a setback, and what made you want to realize this is like the time you wanted to move on to life after football?
Yeah, it's hard. I was in denial for a while. I mean, I was getting pushed funny. I got wrapped up like I never did before in football versus the Dolphins down in Miami. And I just took a bad step and I knew it because I felt the same thing on a this time was a lesser scale than before, but put you in the MRI machine and then they tell you pretty much instantly like you tore your knee up again and I kind of had a hint, that I don't think they're going to give me another shot after this. And so on my way out, Coach Quinn was nice enough to tell me, like, look, we love you. You've done a great job, but like, you're not going to get another shot when you hurt your knee twice. And so just having to live with that. Now, my wife was there for me through the whole thing. And so she was able to like help me get back on my feet. But that was a life-changing incident, for sure to go from I was in this state of unknowing for years, never knowing if there'd ever be a payoff to just grinding kind of blindly. And then you get it. And we almost couldn't believe that it happened because I'd been out for so long. Actually, a funny story about that is I was trying to play in the UFL and the UFL didn't even want me. And so when I was like, how am I ever going to play in the NFL if the UFL won't even accept me? And then as soon as those leagues merged and then they dropped me and I just got a call and like probably not going to pick you up. Sorry about that. It was like a week later that the NFL called and it's just like blind faith in the process that all worked out.
Oh, that's incredible. So that you got told no from like the UFL, but then the NFL showed interest like immediately thereafter.
The guys I was training with in the gym were like, that just doesn't make sense, but we're super happy for you.
It's crazy. And what was that like? You mentioned you had your wife's support throughout that, but obviously football had been such a big part of your life. You'd put so much into it. What is it like to kind of, and I'm sure some of your identity maybe is like a little bit wrapped up in playing football. What's it like to kind of start moving away from that and getting to the next chapter of your life?
Yeah, I mean, she's like, I tell anybody everybody will tell you that's the biggest decision of your life, and that has been true for me. I mean, she helped me through the whole thing, the ugly parts that no one ever wants to think about, right? I got to be Notre Dame football captain, but then I was also functionally handicapped for 9 months, and I couldn't do many things for myself. And so she was going to school at Vanderbilt, which is 7 hours away from Notre Dame, and she would drive that thing on Thursday or Friday, and then she would go back on Sunday, and then she'd have her grad school class at Vandy. She'd have a test every single Monday, and she did that for 6 months straight to make sure I was
Wow.
okay and to take care of me. And then she was working super hard down here in Florida. I didn't have a job because I was full-time training, and then she was working on the side to take care of us, and she was doing her grad school stuff. So she was really my rock that supported me through that whole thing. And so then when I got the call to go to the NFL, it was like almost all for her in some sense because like she had been through she got to be a part of the really good at Notre Dame, but then she was a part of all of the bad that was
Yeah.
after it, then the rough parts and the adversity. And then so it was like amazing, and I wanted her to be a part of that, and she got to come out and like be a part of the Commanders type of organization. But then when I got hurt again, she was there right again. She bounced right back. And so I was at my lowest in my life, and she was right there to take care of me and to help me work through what was next.
Were you married while you were still at Notre Dame?
I got married just this past year, but we have
Oh,
been
okay.
engaged since April 27th, 2023.
Okay. So while you were, but she was coming up even before that to take care of you while you're in school. Wow.
She was my girlfriend at that time. And, but like, you know how sometimes things in life just are, they happen and it's kind of
Yeah.
obvious. Like she was just a girlfriend at that point, not to downplay girlfriends, but like she was not obligated in any sense to go through that type of thing. Like 13 hours of travel every weekend when you're trying to, compete in one of the most competitive grad school programs in the country. It's not an easy thing to do. And she did it for a long time. And then she continued to do hard things like that for 2 years. So
Wow, that's incredible. And so now we mentioned you work for you had some different roles with like the Shields organization. Sorry, I pulled up the wrong Google Doc. But you're
it's okay.
currently,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
I started as chief of staff for Shields Health Innovations. So one of my close mentors is Jack Shields, and he's an incredible human. Like you want to talk about somebody that pulls you out of a really bad time. Jack had been my mentor for probably about, I want to say 2 years. James Onwalu's the one that introduced me to him. James is a great guy, and he's the one that really helped set me on this path. Actually, sidebar about James. I was sitting down as right as I blew out my knee, and it was the first game I'm missing versus Stanford. And James is on the field and comes up to me. He's like, "You're a great guy. Like, I'm gonna help and make sure like you're taken care of and things are gonna be okay." He was the first person that had said something like that to me, and he meant it. And so then he ended up connecting me with some Notre Dame guys. Jack Shields was one of the people, and then I stayed in contact with him. When I got hurt, he called me and he's like, "You can call me at midnight, whatever time it is. Like, if you're hurting and things are bad, like, give me a call and we can talk through it." Um, and so, like, we talked and he ended up just giving me a job down here and just an opportunity to come prove myself. It was just like the NFL, come compete in healthcare space, new world compared to where you just came from, but let's figure it out together.
And how do you think, I mean, you kind of already touched on this, I guess, just kind of being thrown into something new, you're drinking from a fire hose, but how do you think going through everything you did at Notre Dame and I mean balancing athletics and academics and all that prepared you to be successful after football?
I honestly think it's everything. Like, it should not be downplayed how important that is. Student athletes, if anybody even reads or listens to what I say, should be super, super confident in their skills of what they've done, especially if they did something similar to what like the Notre Dame life is like. Because not only are you competing against the best people in the country in the weight room and on the field and at Notre Dame in practice, right? You then have to put that aside. You're exhausted. You haven't slept well in a few days because you got to study. And then you're competing against somebody whose full-time job is to make it to Wall Street. And they're going to do fantastic on Wall Street because all my friends that I were competing against are still working Wall Street or have they gotten even better jobs. So the proof's in the pudding, right? So you're competing against the best in the athletic world and the best in the business world at the same time. That's not easy to do. And so it's an amazing thing when you kind of take the one full-time job away and you can put all your effort into one thing. It's just the same rep you've already done. We're used to being uncomfortable. We have to learn new things, right? I had three defensive coordinators. That's not easy to go learn three separate defenses, and none of them were the same. They all ran them completely different. And so that's the same thing to the business world. It's scary, it's uncomfortable, but you're going to get through it and you're going to learn because it's just how you're bred and what your DNA is. So I think it is exactly the same thing.
And you mentioned earlier that now your role is you serve as the implementation associate at Shields at home. What's it been like to kind of transition to that role?
It's great. It's honestly a lot like being a captain in the sense that you're leading large teams. So you're managing large projects of, 100 plus people at times, and you have to
Oh,
make sure everybody's working together towards one common goal. Does that sound familiar?
yeah.
And so it just kind of happened to be a really good role that fit for me. And so it's really interesting for something I'm good at because, you come from Notre Dame and you have to do finance homework and then philosophy, and then you have to study your playbook. So you're kind of working, 10 jobs at one time. I get to do that same thing. So when I'm doing implementation work, I'm working with people from IT and marketing and operations, and it's a lot of fun because they all think differently. But we have to bring this whole project together all at the same time so that we accomplish one goal with all these different people. So it's pretty similar to where I came from.
Awesome. And we had Tom Carter on a previous episode, so I've learned a little bit more about Project Land, which stands for Life After Notre Dame. But it sounds like that's something you were involved with while you were there. It's something that's important to you. Can you talk a little bit about some of the different things you've done and maybe how that was having access to that was helpful to you as you transitioned away from football?
Yeah, it's really like the way that I felt it when I was coming out was like the safety net, right? That I put everything I had, right? All in on football. But I also kind of had this backup of like I went really hard in finance and the business school to make sure I had something to do. But just because you do all that doesn't mean you're getting the job, right? So with land, a lot of what we're doing is we're trying to meet the athletes where they are so that we can get them where they need to be. So everybody has a good place to land. And what that looks like is, from my perspective, you're an athlete for the rest of your life. At least me, how I feel that way is I'm always going to be competitive no matter what I do. So I don't want to go from being at Notre Dame, the upper echelon of college football, and then in the NFL to like working a job that I don't feel that I'm in that same sphere of, right? And so we want to give people that same opportunity. So really difficult jobs like investment banking or consulting or whatever that may be for an athlete who had this full-time job, couldn't do the normal internship traffic, etc. We go out and we help them make sure that they can get there and give them those opportunities. Now they have to go out and prove themselves, but we just give them that opportunity. And for me, that was super true. So I went to Tom Carter, was actually the first person I called. I'm like, hey, I had an injury. Like, that's it for me. I'm done. Like, I need to move on. And he was there for me, him and Brandon Curry did a great job of bringing me in. And then obviously I ended up landing with Jack, but I just look at my class and I'm not going to say anyone's name, but there's a number of people that came through there. But there's some people that like they are earned it on merit, but we just helped provide them the access to a very exclusive opportunity. And so we're giving people that option. And so like how I look at it is Jack told me the best thing you can do is get off the couch, right? And so put your stuff and your energy into something that's good and fulfilling. That couldn't have been more true. And so making sure these people have a great place to go work and to be around like-minded people in a good culture. It's more than just getting them a job. It's saving a future. And that's how we look at it. And then there's other people that they just need more help. Like, and it's no different from what like the NFLPA has. They have mental health services and all these different resources that are available to the players. Land is just here to help people move through that transition. And I can tell you, it is okay to not be okay when you come out of football. It is so hard. You lose your brotherhood. You lose the locker room. You're in a different space. You're in a foreign state. At least I was. It's all change. It's all different. It's all hard. And then you just really need to have one or two people that really believe in you, and they're going to tell you it's okay and help you through it. And then once I felt that, and once I saw what they were doing with some of my friends, I just had to be a part of it. And so I think, like, honestly, if you're a Notre Dame alumni that's doing well, that you even have any bit of time that you're willing to share, like, you're almost obligated to just help that next generation get there.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. And what's it been like to you for you to start maybe giving back some of those ways? I know you're still kind of early in your maybe professional career, but to have gone through some of those things and be able to share some of what you've been through to help others.
Yeah, I think my story is just a story of adversity, right? Like, it kept being like I thought there was going to be this big story at the end, and I still believe that, right? Like I'm going to
Yeah.
get to where I want to go, but it's just a little bit different than how I thought it was going to be. And I think that's the story for a lot of people. We fixate on we think this is where we're going to get to be happy, and that's the only way to get there. But I feel like my story is a lot of you can do everything you can control in life. You can work as hard as you possibly can, and it can still not go the right way. And that is okay. It's just how do we get to where you want to go that's happy and fulfilling, and you're going to be safe and healthy and have a good family and just make sure people are stable and taken care of. We don't want people, what we call it is the cliff. We don't want to go off the cliff and worse things start happening. So it's really just taking care of people, and it's been super fulfilling for me, right? Like taking people care of people in my own class, or taking care of people that are way older than me, or just coming out now. It doesn't matter. It's we're all the Notre Dame family, and it's brother taking care of brother and sister taking care of sister, and that's really what it's all about.
Great. And I just have a couple more questions. One is something you already touched on, but your linebacker coaches, and obviously they were also defensive coordinators, were Clark Lee, who's the head coach at Vanderbilt, which just had a really good season, Marcus Freeman, and Al Golden, who's now the defensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals. What's it like to have those guys be who coached you in your position group specifically, and maybe now seeing the different types of things they're doing afterwards too?
Yeah, it's special. And you always want those people to go on and do big things, you know. When someone has such an inherent impact on you and it's a good thing, it's like there's a part of you that like obviously you want them to succeed just because you like them, but like in that role, you're kind of like the father figure for a lot of guys, and they definitely were for me. And so for them to be able to then give that to other kids and grow them over their time at Notre Dame or Vanderbilt, obviously it's a little bit different in the pros, but you know, being able to be there and just make sure that like they're a coach, they're a great guy, like that's just so important. And so I was super fortunate that I've kind of been a part of this trajectory of all these coaches. And so it's been fun to watch from the sidelines.
And what's it like for you now? I assume maybe you root for Vanderbilt a little bit too with your connections there, but to be a former Notre Dame football player, I assume, watching games on Saturdays. I've heard from other players it's more stressful now than it was when you were a player. I'm kind of curious what that experience has been like, especially with, I mean, two successful seasons last 2 years, but obviously ended in ways you wouldn't necessarily want them to as well.
Yeah, it feels exactly like I didn't study my playbook and I'm underprepared to watch the game. And so like not knowing the game plan or being not ready to watch like the offense and I don't have like the indicators down, like it does stress me out sometimes. And so like my wife Chloe will be like, can you just like watch the game? Like you don't have to like be analyzing it. And it's just baked in at this point. So I'd agree with that. It stresses me out since I don't know what's going on. It's like I'm completely out of control.
That's funny. And what's it like for you? I mean, do you find yourself gravitating to the linebackers a little more? Do you watch the ball more than you thought you would? What's it like to take in the game now, knowing you have all this experience and significant knowledge?
Watch the ball just to be easier, but like I do find myself watching the linebackers because it's so fun to like you can like put yourself in their shoes and almost see it from their eyes from the TV. And so just to like, I don't know, you kind of relive it. To be honest, I watch Notre Dame, I watch Vanderbilt, and that's it. So those are my two teams now. I love Notre Dame to the core. I'm a proud alumni. I'm a huge Clark Lee disciple and Nick Lazinski. So I hope both those programs succeed.
Maybe that makes it a little easier with your wife also having gone to school there too, I guess.
Yeah. The household is united in that.
That's great. Well, that's all my questions for today. Thank you so much for being here with me.
Yeah, Drew, thanks for having me.
And for everyone listening, we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode.